Good morning and progress.
Call to the Lowell City Council work session for Tuesday, February 21st at 6:30. Roll call, please.
Mayor Bennett.
Here.
Councilor Harris.
Here.
Councilor Stratus.
Present.
Councilor Weathers. Here. Councilor Murray. Here.
Okay, we have a presentation by the Willamette Valley System Environmental Impact Statement. Mr. Cottle, you want to introduce this?
Yes, joining us tonight, we have a presentation by Greg Taylor, lead fisheries biologist with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, to talk about the environmental impact statement. Greg, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you for having me. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Good. So I've got a PowerPoint and I will share that. Let me make sure that's all working before we start here. Oh, hey, Jeremy.
Yes.
It's saying that the host disabled attendee screen sharing.
Let me fix that for you. Try to get it.
Which I don't blame you.
All right, it should be fixed now, Greg.
All right. Let's see what I can. Can you guys see this?
No.
No, not yet. The wizard.
Okay, how about now?
There you go.
All right. Is that big enough for you? I might leave it in that mode if that works. I can make it bigger, but.
That's fine.
That's fine, Greg.
Okay. Well, again, thank you for having me. And I'm going to give you essentially an abbreviated version of a presentation we've been doing for the public over the last month or so. And the presentation really is focused on something the Corps is undertaking in the basin, which is they're doing an environmental impact statement. And just to get people oriented a little bit, I think everybody in this room is probably aware of this, but the Corps operates 13 dams and reservoirs in the Willamette Basin. They're multi-purpose projects. They do things like hydropower, fisheries, recreation, a whole bunch of different authorized purposes. We also have 5 fish hatcheries and a bank protection program, which people don't always recognize or understand. But that in total is the Willamette Valley. Here it's called system. Under the authorization, it was the Willamette Valley Project. And so that is, the thing that we're going to talk a little bit about tonight. And so the first question you might have, and the reason I'm speaking to you tonight is, well, why are we doing an environmental impact statement? And there's really 2 reasons I think that are driving this. One, the last time we did an environmental impact statement was 1980. So it's been a while, and things have changed. And a lot of things have changed since 1980. I think we're all, everybody in the room, including myself, is pretty aware of that. I think I was 8, and I'm 50 now, which is just terrifying. But, we've had listings of endangered species. We've had a biological opinion issued. We've had just a whole bunch of changes that have occurred that really are driving us towards this. The other piece of this is the litigation, and I'm not going to go into the litigation tonight. Maybe if we have a little time at the end, I'll speak to the litigation. But we were sued under the Endangered Species Act, and that in part drove some of this. So the proposed action, or the thing that we're going to consider under the environmental impact statement, is essentially what I described on that first slide. It's the operation of the Willamette Valley project, or the Willamette Valley system. And specifically, the authorized purposes associated with that, and doing that in compliance with the Endangered Species Act and any other applicable laws or regulations. So that is our proposed action under this. We're going to keep operating the dams and reservoirs for the things that they've traditionally done. In saying that, I think if you guys know, and some of you in this room know a lot about it, others don't know as much, but we're always trying to balance different things that we do. And here's a kind of a graphic that demonstrates some of the different things that we try to balance, or try, they're in tension with each other at times, right? If we do one of them, it might negatively impact another. And so we're constantly trying to balance these different things that we can do with the dams. And that balance has really changed over time. So if you go back 70 years ago, when a lot of these dams were put in place, we traced the rule curve, which is our filling curve, and I'll talk about that at some point in this presentation. No matter what, at any cost to downstream, flows, et cetera, that was just how things were done. Well, we don't do that anymore. There's a different balance. And that will keep changing. That's something that will change in the future. Some things will get more emphasis, others will get less, and that will evolve over time, and hopefully reflects, what society would like to see. So I'm going to give you only 2 timelines associated with this EIS, because it's pretty complicated, quite frankly. There's 2 key dates. One is coming up really quick, and that's the end of what we're calling the public comment period. So this document's out. It's a very large document. The document itself is around 2,500 pages. There's an additional several thousand pages of appendices. So it's very large. But we've been presenting this to the public, and now the public's had a chance to begin to comment on the document. And so the key date really here is February 23rd. That is going to be the last date for folks to comment on this document. The other key date in this whole thing is December 31st, 2024. And that's really going to be where this process ends. And it's going to end in combination with another process that we're working on, which is, I mentioned the litigation. We were sued under the Endangered Species Act. We have to go back and reconsult under the Endangered Species Act. And to complete that process, it also needs to be done on December 31st, 2024. So we are doing a reconsultation on the Endangered Species Act. We're also doing this EIS, and they're kind of parallel, but they also interact, and they're going to end at the same time. So again, 2 key dates on the EIS, the comment period ending in a couple of days, and then ultimately this document being wrapped up at the end of December on 2024. So I'm going to point out a few elements of the document and some timelines, and give you a flavor for what's in some of these documents. When you read the document, what you find out is the Corps developed a number of alternatives. And these are really alternatives for how to operate and maintain the projects going forward. The alternatives are made up of different individual measures. And so a measure would be an example of a measure would be kind of an action you could take. And they really fall into kind of 2 buckets. So one bucket would be, and I'll give you an example, an operational measure. So an operational measure might be that you draw a particular reservoir down to a particular elevation at a particular time. That's an operational measure. You can contrast that with a structural measure. So a structural action that you take. So you construct a floating fish facility or a screen structure that you'll put in a reservoir to collect juvenile fish. That's a structural measure. So we have both these operational measures, structural measures, and across the basin, we combined those different types of measures to form different alternatives. And I don't have them all tonight, and you'd be here for 2 hours if I went through all this stuff. And so you're lucky that we didn't do that. But these alternatives that we've developed are one that's kind of structures focused. So everywhere we build structures, one that's kind of operationally focused, and then the rest of them are sort of a combination of both structure and operational alternatives across the basin. And I'm going to highlight one of them for you because I think that's a key one to look at and focus on. And that is what we're calling Alternative 5, which has a horrifically governmental name if you look at it. But Alternative 5 really is, again, a combination of both these operational measures and structural measures. And if you go across all the dams, some of the key elements of it, a floating screen structure and temperature control tower at Detroit Dam. So over in the North Santiam, we're going to build a structure over there, 2 structures. A fish facility at Green Peter Dam, another structure. A spill and a drawdown at Green Peter Dam. So that's an operational measure that we're using. An operational measure at Cougar, where we're going to draw Cougar Reservoir down to the diversion tunnel, essentially to stream bed. And then a floating surface collector at Lookout Point. So a structural approach at Lookout. And I should say these are long-term. These are the things that we've put out to the public, and these are the things that we're hoping to get comments on and get people's opinions on. No final decision's been made around these. And some of these, when we talk about their implementation, have very, very, very long timelines, and I'll highlight those in just a minute. Let me pause for just a second and see if there's questions. Any questions so far? I was kind of cruising through that. Okay. Okay, and so here's the timeline that I mentioned. This is a kind of a draft for some of the major actions under under the EIS that we're considering, and some of the timelines associated with those. So if you look at this, we have downstream fish passage at Foster, the structures that we're considering at Detroit, the drawdown at Cougar, the structure at Lookout, and then Hills Creek downstream passage as well that might be considered. So again, some of these timelines are quite long in terms of the implementation. And then what are we going to do in the near term? So what we're going to do in the near term is driven a lot by litigation. So if you look over here in the Middle Fork, and these are the places that you care about, Lookout Point, Dexter, we have Springs and Summer Spill. I'll talk about that. A drawdown at Lookout Point in the fall. Well, that is a new operation. I'll talk about that. We have a drawdown at Fall Creek and then a delayed refill at Fall Creek. Almost all of those are driven by an injunction, and this was an outcome of litigation that we lost. And the important thing to know about this is it's not discretionary for us. we don't get to choose whether we do these things or not. These are things that we have hard requirements around in the form of a judge's final order. And so they're not discretionary for us, these short-term actions. And it's critical that we do them for that reason. So what I've got here is the water control diagram, and this is for Lookout Point Dam. So the black line, you can see that, is the traditional refill curve that all the dams follow. This one's specific to Lookout Point. And then the project gets as full as it's going to get during the late spring through the summer. And then it begins to draw back down in the fall and the winter. But under the proposed operation, we'll be filling the project up around the spillway crest, and we'll be spilling water for about 30 days in and around that spillway crest. And then the dam's going to start coming down. And this is where things depart significantly from how we've operated in the past. Lookout Point, instead of stopping at its minimum conservation pool, this normal low winter pool area, is going to continue to draw down 75 feet. And that is going to be to allow fish to pass through a regulating outlet structure that's near that elevation. And so this is a significant departure from how we've done things. The pool will be held down for about a month, and then it'll refill. And we're expecting to refill it essentially normally and get it up to where it needs to be by the time that we would start the refill again the following season. And this will be something we implement for the very first time this year. That's Lookout. And then lastly, in your area is Fall Creek. And again, same sort of rule curve, same sort of process, but then a very modified refill curve from what we've historically done. And again, this is a fish passage focused rule curve. Last year we implemented this. We were very fortunate. We got very late rain, and we were actually able to almost refill Fall Creek, which was somewhat miraculous. This year, things don't look that rosy so far. We've got a long time to go, so that's the good news. But we expect a lot of years will look a lot more like this blue line than this black line that we've traditionally had. And this will be something we implement over the next several years. In the EIS, we've proposed long-term to not do this piece of it in the spring, to fill it more normally, and then draw it back down to the stream bed like we've been doing for a short period of time each winter for about the last decade. We've been doing that. So, all right, I'm gonna stop sharing and I'll hopefully answer any questions that you have.
Greg, could you go back to the lookout or the lookout graph?
Slide 11.
Yeah. Take me 1 second. And you guys did get the really fast version of that. But I think probably appropriate to just have some time to look at the questions or spend some time talking about the questions. Yeah, what are the specific questions? I know this is very different.
Could you share slide 11 again?
Yeah, I thought I was. Is it not? Are you not seeing it?
It's not on there.
But does everybody understand the passage through the dam? It's
Okay, I'm gonna try it one more time. For some reason, it's messed up.
On screen.
You see a lot, right?
Did we leave a copy of the PowerPoint? Or you said you were going to send it? Didn't you?
You had it just a moment ago. You just chose
I
the wrong.
know. Yeah, I know. For some reason, I'm not seeing it up. Where is it?
The print was just too small for me, but you said that that was gonna start on Lookout this summer, the big drawdown?
Yeah, the drawdown takes a long time because it's so deep. And so you're going to see the pool pulled down like
And what's-
like it traditionally has here. I think I got it. Can you see it now?
Yes,
All right.
hang on, it's trying to come up on the TV.
May. So May is when it starts doing the real dive.
There you go.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
It's gonna start in April, May to drop, or between May and
Well,
June.
so what it'll do is, and this isn't necessarily a perfect depiction of it, but it's going to go up to the spillway crest. Now, I will point out to you right now, we've barely filled a drop at Lookout already. We're way behind this roll curve already because it's been so dry. So we're already off the curve, which is not unusual. That happens in a lot of years. But the intention is to get back up to spillway crest, hold that spill, court ordered spill for at least 30 days. And then eventually we'll start a drawdown, and we haven't worked out all the details. I suspect it's going to be closer to July than it is June. And we will probably fill above the spillway crest as well. So it probably end up being in a band here. And then eventually we'll start that drawdown. But the thing to know is that we're probably going to be all the way down to minimum conservation pool by, say, August, early September. And then we're going to keep going. And that's the big difference. All the way down to this elevation, about 75 feet below the normal minimum conservation pool. And then it'll bounce back up. So it is a very big difference. Again, this is something we're required to do per the court order. It's not the way we intend to operate Lookout Point long-term post the EIS. However, the timeline to implement the permanent solution at Lookout is quite long. So there's a good chance we could be doing something like this for an extended period of time, because something like this would be in place before we get the permanent solution in place, structural solution.
my question is, what is the effect of this on Dexter Lake levels, given that we have summertime and early fall events?
Yeah, this should have no effect on Dexter Lake levels. Dexter is what we call a re-regulating dam, and so Dexter is going to does its normal 1 to 5 foot fluctuations daily. None of that's going to change. So Dexter's elevation will not change really at all beyond the normal fluctuations that everybody's used to.
I have a couple of questions for you.
Yeah.
If you draw that down to that level, is that going to affect the temperature of the water and the salmon coming up the stream? Or is that still going to maintain cool it up?
Yeah, so no, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but the water quality below Dexter does not sustain salmon spawning. It's lethal to salmon spawning. They can spawn down there, but they're not successful. And that's been that way for 70 years.
Will they even come upstream if it's warm?
Well, they will come upstream. This should not influence the temperatures, especially during the time that the salmon are migrating upstream, and there shouldn't be any problem collecting the adults at Dexter or letting people fish for the adults. So I don't expect this to have the spill that we do actually helps. Typically when we have migration problems with salmon, and this is going to be counterintuitive, it's actually because the water's too cold. And so that this is actually an improvement over the normal condition, and we should have good adult migration back to the dam.
I have a second question. For Dexter, how do they, I can see how they're going to get into Dexter. How do they get out?
Yeah, so we will spill the normal spillway gates at Dexter, and they won't have any problem finding their way out of there. All the testing we've done in the past, once fish get into Dexter, specifically the juvenile salmon, they tend to get out pretty quickly, especially if we're spilling water through the spillway gates. So they will just go through the normal spillway gates. There won't be any, well, that's an operation, but it's nothing's, we're not going to draw it down or do anything like that.
Okay. You get rid of our pike minnows if you did that.
Get a bunch of walleye in there too, and smallmouth and everything else nowadays. It's an interesting place.
That's all I had.
All right. Anybody else?
So will that increase turbidity then for you pulling water?
Yeah, I've been talking with me and Drew both with some of his coworkers, and we're in a pretty good loop. They've kept very good communication with us. I anticipate the first time they spilled over the top, you know, you got all that debris built up for years, that we'll have an increased, we call it turnover, but turbidity spike. We're just gonna set up a good operational plan to be able to withstand that in summertime, because it's gonna hit us right when we start to get the peak. And then it'll be nice though, because once it pushes everything through, you know, when they go through the deep roll, it's really get pushed through. I think it'll stabilize back out. But I think the first maybe 1 to 3 times they do it, because as lookout goes down, I mean, I recreate up there a lot, you know, sloughing and stuff. That's why they're doing the control, but it's still gonna get some sediment pushed through. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the thing to point out, is that the river that first year especially is going to have to recut its channel. It's going to be several miles that have to recut where sediment has kind of silted in. The good news is it's a lot different than what we do at Fall Creek, because you'll still have a large residual lake and pool there. So a lot of that material will just kind of resettle out, but it's going to be turbid. And so the really fine stuff will stay in solution. And so you're going to see that turbid water for sure. And then over time, that should get better and better. I went out to Fall Creek this year, you know, and it was clear all the way to the intake this year, towards the end of this last drawdown we did. And that, you know, the river just completely cut the channel. So this will take some time, and there definitely be some turbidity, no doubt about it.
Where do you find the entire plan online? Do you have a link on your presentation there someplace?
Yeah, at the end of the presentation, there's a link to the injunction measures. So these are all the measures that we're required to do by the court. I can also send you something where you can the link to the EIS and the comment stuff as well. That would be available. And time is of the essence. As I said, we're a couple days out on that one. But the more we hear from people, the better, for sure.
Greg, is there
Anything
something
else? Any other questions I can answer? I know that was super quick. That's probably the fastest one I've done. But hopefully we hit the highlights.
Greg, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Gail. Is there something we could lay our hands on? It's a pretty simple explanation. I'm just thinking, we get a lot of questions from our community when, you know, we see a lot of activity on Facebook. People get really frustrated with
Yeah.
going to the board, as you well know. And so just something that we can work with, or maybe even help educate our community, because they're not all gonna have caught what's going on and.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gail, we put together some like one pagers that do a pretty nice job of summarizing, because people, we're looking at it from the basin perspective, but a lot of times people have a very specific site they care about.
Right.
So that's what we did in this case. So there's a bunch of one pagers that got put together for the different subbasins. So like, or the different dams. So like, what are we doing at Lookout? What are we doing at Dexter? What are we doing at, and I think that could be helpful, because then you can kind of see everything that's sort of anticipated. Again, to summarize, what you're going to see here in the next few years is that drawdown at both Fall Creek and Lookout. That's the main thing you're going to see.
Right.
And then long term, there'll be a structure at Lookout. But
Right.
yeah, I can get those. We can get those to you.
Just the ones that.
Yeah, just the
Yeah.
ones for Lookout, Dexter and Fall Creek.
1,001 pages.
Yeah, I mean, I know the basic thing is that that the Corps is required to do this stuff. That's kind of the main message people have to understand. And that you're not making that decision. That's really what they.
Yeah, the injunction measures that we're required to do under court order, these drawdowns are, again, we have no discretion around those. The EIS, at the end of the day, the things that we choose long-term to do, we do have, some choices around, and that's the part that the public gets to participate in, right? That's why it's unique. Like, you can't be involved with the court order or the EIS or the ESA consultation, but you can be involved with the EIS, and that's really important. So that's really key for folks it's the public's chance, right, to help influence how we operate the projects going forward. And I think that's good.
But they can't comment unless they know how it might affect, and so that's what we were looking for, was something that we can have for in Fall Creek too, even though it's not city limits, but something that would be easy for people to go to, that we can refer them to instead of having to explain it.
Yeah, and that's why I focused, again, this is a massive document. I mean, it's 2,500 pages, and it's got all these different alternatives, and that's why I kind of presented alternative 5, and that's kind of what the one pagers do too, because it gives you something to sort of chew on that's a little more digestible than the giant document itself, which is huge. So yeah, I'll make sure you guys get a copy of those.
Thank you, Greg.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I would have loved to come in person, but this is a night I have with my daughter, and I don't give those up. So
Thank you, Greg.
all right, well, enjoy the rest of your meeting.
Good night.
That's it. We'll adjourn at 7:01. You want to turn it off and on?
No, I'll just keep it going.
Okay. Okay, we'll call order the February 21st regular meeting at 7:02. Roll call, please.
Mayor Bennett.
Here.
Councilor Harris.
Here.
Councilor Stratus. Councilor Weathers. Here. Councilor Murray. Here.
Stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States one nation under God, indivisible. Is the approval of the agenda. Anybody say anything that they want to add? Subtract, multiply. Okay. Next up is the consent agenda. We have the January check register, December, January financial reports, regular meetings on the 17th and 21st. Anybody have anything they want to take out to discuss? We have a motion to approve the consent agenda. We have a second. Moved by Maureen, second by Tim to accept the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Okay. Public comments. You have any public comment?
Yeah. My name's O'Regan. I'm at 62 East Third. I have several things I'd like to discuss. Several meetings back, I gave a handout to the city administrator and to the mayor. And the mayor told me, and I quote, if it's on public property, private property, we're not gonna deal with it. That's what you told me.
I don't remember that, but go ahead.
Yeah, well, I do. It clearly states in the enforcement process. The most common violations of the law include the following: accumulation of garbage, junk, debris clearly visible from the street or alley. Dismantled vehicle parts stored on private property, clearly visible from the street. So you were wrong in your comment. And I like to see these violations be dealt with. The second thing is, our city administrator appears to be taking over the committees with changes, schedules, et cetera, and so my suggestion is, if he wants to run the show, you, city administrator, can disband all the committees and you can take it over the whole process, and we'll see how bad you do or how good you do.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah.
George Wild, PO Box 224 Lowell, subject 2023 Blackberry Jam. As you're probably aware, the future of the Blackberry Jam is in doubt due to the possible lack of volunteers. The Blackberry Jam must not go away. This has been a well-run, well-oiled operation for the past 25 years without interference. We need a minimum of 17 or more by the end of the month, or it will be cancelled. This is the only signature event that we have to promote the city. Once gone, it will be difficult to resurrect. So I'm challenging everyone here tonight, those online, to step up to the plate and save the jam. Last year, when it was decided to go forward with the jam, I came to the city council and requested help from the members of the council. It was a dismal response. This year, your city council members and you are supposed to be the leaders. We look up to you. Good leaders lead from the front. Now is your opportunity to roll up your sleeves and shine. Surely this is not too much to ask. Hopefully we can count on each one of you to help this year. The Blackberry Jam needs you, and remember, there is always the ballot box. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Public comment or council comments? Okay. Staff reports. Well, we go to city administrator on page 121.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everybody. Our report tonight covers activities since the January 17 regular meeting. A summary of major activities is as follows. We have a ribbon cutting scheduled this Saturday for the Maggie Osgood Library. The event will begin at 11 o'clock. We'll have some comments from the state librarian. Our library director has a story time to follow. We'll have some treats, and it's been a long time coming and we're all very excited about it. On the East Main Street property, we are nearing the finish line on getting our no further action letter to complete the sale. DEQ has informed me that they finalized some language for some documents that need to be filed. They'll be sending us the letter soon. And we were negotiating some addendums to our agreement with the buyer on the property. I proposed to the buyer that we postpone those negotiations until we get this letter And then we'll come back and we'll craft an addendum that meets everybody's concerns. So there was a public hearing scheduled for tonight on that, and that is canceled. We'll probably reschedule that for sometime in March. The Planning Commission has concluded their work sessions and public hearing on the development code updates. They completed that in January. On February the 15th, they voted 3-0 to recommend approval of the development code updates, though with some amendments. I have a first reading before City Council and a public hearing scheduled for March 7th. A second reading is scheduled for March 21st. The Planning Commission's meetings and their work sessions are online. I would encourage the council to view those work sessions. That'll give you an idea of what we discussed. We went through each section by section. It'll give you an opportunity to hear the concerns that the Planning Commission had and the response from the staff. So this will give you the chance to understand in detail what's in the code update and perhaps make sure we don't have to have a similar long work sessions with the council as well. And if there is an interest in the council on holding a work session to discuss these updates in more detail, I need to know that soon so I can get it scheduled. Our planning consultants have a lot of other big projects that they're working on, and I'll need to coordinate with them.
The only question I got on that or request is, as I was watching, there were always documents that weren't available. They weren't in the packet. And so it's hard to follow because y'all are looking at something that I didn't have the ability to view. So I don't know how helpful that's going to be.
It's all online if you go to the development code page, everything that we talked about is on that page.
Our own documents.
Is that the one with the red outs?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not what you're looking at when you're talking at the meeting though. I mean, I get what you're saying. I mean, the development, the whole comp plan's out there online for that matter, but are you saying that it's within the agenda packet so that it's handy for each work session? Or are you just saying that these are just part of the whole development code in a separate document?
Let me show you. So this is what we went through. This is the marked up version.
Right.
So everything that we talked about is this is what we focused on, the marked up version. So you should be able to follow along. And if you have any issues, members of the council and public are welcome to reach out to me. But this, if you go to the homepage, government development code updates, everything is there. Does that help?
I'll have to go back and look at it because I couldn't track with what you guys were looking at.
I'll
Nobody
be,
said a page or any kind of thing. I really couldn't tell. I just couldn't tell. So I'm just saying that if you're gonna start cold on this and look at it, wow, that's not gonna be a very efficient way to.
I would
Catch
say,
up.
you think the work session would be a wise decision?
At
Sit
least
there and actually go through it before we sit down and start talking, making a decision on it.
At least some kind of consolidated, not slogging through back and forth, because, things, they did get resolved as it went along. So I'm not suggesting that everybody goes back and reviews every work session, because a lot of that's gonna be just wasted motion that's gonna be handled by the end, well, I'll let the rest of the council.
I agree. They went through a lot of things. There was a lot of back and forth before they made their decision, but it might make the council more comfortable to have a kind of go through and see what was decided, how it was decided, things like that, to keep everybody up to speed. But a lot of work's been done on it, and I don't want to get to the last point and we only halfway present it to the council and say we need a decision. I think the council needs to be fully comfortable with what's being decided. And if we disagree with the planning commission, I think that we should feel firmly on our own ground that we're making the right decision going against the planning commission or agreeing with them. But, you know, whichever way we decide, you know, I think that we should, I think a work session might be handy.
Well, but to give you some frame of reference, it took the planning commission 2 work sessions, 2 hours each, plus a final meeting that was probably an extra 2 hours to go through every single section. So if that's what you want to do, I can schedule that.
I think what we do is the ones that they actually voted on and they found different than what was in the original document, it might be more comfortable.
So,
Go, you know, kind of go through the ones, there was the presentation, and then there was changes or amendments to it. Somehow, if we get the amendments exposed to the council, I think in the reason for them, that might be.
well, that should be easy. There are only 3 amendments.
Okay. We can do that in a regular session, and you feel comfortable about that. But it was a long discussion, like you said.
Yeah, that's not a very good way for the council to get up to speed on what we're gonna be asked to vote on is to go back and reading 6 hours of work session stuff. That's not gonna cut it.
He's talking about just doing the things that they changed.
Well,
So I'm just trying to clarify.
I thought there was more than 3, but that's the other thing. I don't know because I haven't seen it yet. So, and it's coming. So
I haven't seen
what the decisions were, a written thing yet.
No, you haven't seen that.
Right,
That is
yeah.
correct.
So.
That is correct.
So we will see that.
And if we could see it with a little bit more lead time would be good, so that, because it's a big day deal. I mean, it's not just a little 3-pager that you read through and go.
So,
That's the bad thing. It has.
And we had some exposure to it
major
at the
impact.
joint meeting, but
Yeah.
that's been a while too, and
Yeah.
a lot has happened since then. But yeah, no, I'm not talking about a full blown go through every stinking line. That's not what I'm suggesting. That's certainly something that the public could understand if they were watching it and they got the gist of it, you know, in our session, not, you know, planning commission work session.
Maybe have an hour before or something like that. Go through it. I don't know how long, something like.
Mhm.
all right. The next item under planning and development issues is longtime planning commission chair Lon Drott has decided not to reapply. Since his term has expired, he's been on the planning commission for 6 years. That means that the next item of business for the next planning commission meeting will be to swear in 2 new members and appoint a new chairperson. Moving on to the parks, I've received an updated quote for trees for the Paul Fisher Park Shade Tree Program. They don't have some trees in stock. We did have some alternates on the tree plan. They quoted us for that. I've asked them to go back and look at the trees that match up to what we, to what our preference was. They're smaller than what we said. And to let me know if they're very small, we're not going to get them. But if it's within reason, I may purchase it. But I just want to let you know that I'm getting close to making a next round of purchases for that. I've had some follow-up conversations with Santa Pat on the franchise ordinance, following up from our February 7th meeting. We continue to discuss the concerns around standardizing the rate schedule. I continued those negotiations as far as I could, and it looks like the best compromise that we're going to be able to reach is providing advance notice to customers. I also heard some suggestions about starting up an assistance program for solid waste customers, and I'll continue to look into that, but that would have to be a city initiated project. I'd like to schedule a first reading of this in March. And to conclude by the end of March. And another option would be not to enter into a franchise agreement with Santa Fe. That's a conversation that we can have, when it's on the agenda in March, but I feel like I've pushed negotiations as far as I can at this point. On the surplus city lot on 70 North Pioneer Street, I have a fence contractor scheduled to come out to put a fence on there. We have a recommendation from the Planning Commission on rezoning the lot. I anticipate in March coming to you with a request to authorize me to put the property up for sale, using for sale by owner method like we did last time. Moving on to the Firewise grants,
Excuse me, will the final zoning need to be in place before we do put it up for sale?
I
That
don't-
should be completed, shouldn't it?
no, it probably should.
I would think that, I don't know how you could put something up for sale without knowing what the zoning was. I don't know how you get somebody to borrow money against it.
Yeah, it probably should be rezoned. Upcoming on the market. Our local Firewise community submitted a grant on the city's behalf, about $25,000 to do some fuels reduction work. Lastly, on the Blackberry Jam Festival Committee, the committee met on February 13th. We talked about needing to have some volunteers signed up so that we could have the staffing that we need to proceed with certainty. We also talked about scaling down the festival to match up to our capacity. The chairperson and I also plan on developing job descriptions, task lists, and deadlines for each of the roles that we need to carry out the festival. That way, volunteers have some certainty of what they need to be working on. Go ahead.
Do we have how many volunteers do we have?
I haven't tallied it so far. I'd say around 10 or so.
Oh, so we're getting close.
We're getting close.
Is there a list of the jobs you're talking about? Is that,
I do have a list of jobs.
okay. Maybe I can get that. Put together.
And lastly, I'm continuing to work on our emergency management planning. I have a meeting next week with Lane County Emergency Management so I can start working on our city annex. What questions do you have for me?
What are we doing to get out the word for the volunteers? Putting it on the Facebook page.
I believe I put it in the bridge. Facebook, I haven't been on Facebook yet.
Some of the members have put it on the Fall Creek Watch and neighborhood, whatever, the local ones like that, and see if people are interested, so.
I haven't seen it on Fall Creek
I
neighborhood.
didn't see it either.
That's the biggest one. I mean,
Yeah, it'd be good to get the word out if we're at a week deadline, to make a decision.
Yeah, maybe have Sam put it on. Want to try to have Sam put it on those.
So have you got people volunteering for certain things already, or just volunteers?
Just volunteers. Some people have specified certain things. I have a lot of people sign up for the information booth. If I get 15 people signed up for information booth, that's,
that counts as 3.
yeah. So at the next meeting in March, we'll take our list and we'll have to start assigning people roles. And the biggest roles include the subcommittee chairs, the people who are actually doing specific projects. That's where we need the most support.
That's what I figured, where you need specific. Like somebody's gonna set up all the music.
The music, vendors, food trucks.
Right.
We should have had lists from the past. Have you been in touch? Has anybody been in touch with who's done it in the past couple of years?
But the chairperson has.
Okay.
What makes it difficult is a lot of these folks that kind of retired from it.
the COVID had a bad effect where people stopped, and people got over it, and there wasn't backfill by the younger people. So it's hard to go back to the old people say, we want you to come back on and do something again, so.
Well, in some ways, we're still trying to restart.
So whether, I don't know. I just don't, I'll let you guys, don't guess it at this point. Public Works, thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Short update for Public Works, streets and parks, staff has closed the park restrooms again. For vandalism, they will remain closed till a later date. The restrooms in Paul Fisher have been closed for a while, and we just closed Rolling Rock Park 2 weeks ago. West 7th Street, the damaged area of First Street from the water leak have been re-rocked, re-rolled and regraded. So 7th Street was in pretty good need of it. First Street is just to get us by until we can do the repairs. Water treatment plant distribution, there's nothing new, everything's going pretty good there, especially since the leak. So wastewater treatment plant, staff is slowly transition to summer permit. We operate on 2 permits there, we're more strict, made October permit and then October to April. So we're getting the plant ready, working on maintenance, swing into the new. I attended the League of Oregon Cities small city meeting in Creswell 2 Fridays ago. It's the first in-person meeting I've been to. It was good for me to go, not only at networking, but also to see where we kind of are with other cities. There was about 35 other cities there, and we got a lot going on like everybody, but we've got a lot more positives going on than everybody else. So it was good. It made me feel kind of good. I came back and told Jeremy I was excited, told my staff, and his other cities are having staffing issues, so they're having housing issues, and so it felt pretty good to be where we're at, because Lowell hasn't always been there. Everybody knows that. We were just in their shoes not too long ago. So, that's all I have for that. Any questions? To give one other update on the cover bridge, I've been getting a lot of questions about the cover bridge. The reason the cover bridge is not open is because the gate is damaged again. We have reached out to Lane County to actually have a meeting, hopefully scheduled within next month. Jeremy has reached out to see if we can have a sit down, not only about that, but also about our IGA that we have within county. So we tried to fix the gate in-house without significant cost. But I don't think that's going to be possible. I think as soon as it gets open and closed again, it's just going to damage it. So I will keep you guys updated on that. Hopefully we get to meet with them in early March.
But vandalism or just mechanical failure?
I think a little bit of both. I think it looked like, right after we had the event, the tree lighting event, that Monday, the gate was damaged up. So somebody tried to get in there, and, maybe take the heater or something. We took all the valuable stuff out. So it's hard to say, honestly. So.
Is there any way to modify that in the future that actually bears definitely and make it so that if the whole door won't roll up, you can install like a man door within the door?
That's one of the things we brought up last time. Yep. It would have, what we were told by the vendor last time that we got the quote I brought to you guys a couple years with the 38 grand was the material would have to be different. The aluminum would support the man doors and they just push right through the man door. So that was an option. The other option was, get rid of the motor, go back to the hand crank. Everybody who's volunteered down there knows we used to have the hand crank to lift it up. It is a pain, but mechanically it won't jam up or break up. Well, if nobody vandalizes it, that's the first thing. Gets it off the track, they won't have the issue. But unfortunately, we don't, that's going to be difficult to keep somebody down all the time. So yeah, for now, it's going to remain closed. I mean, right now it's not good to go in there anyways, because it's pretty slick this morning, and everybody knows that wooden area gets slick. So I will keep you guys updated as soon as we figure out a resolution or moving forward. We're going to
Yeah, we had the Oak Ridge Police Department. And next up is the Public Hearing Council. So I guess the presentation by Matt on the SDCs. 36. Jeremy, you want to introduce him?
Yes. Joining us this evening is Matt Wadlington. our city engineer. This is to follow up on our January 17th discussion on the system development charges for the water department and the parks department. The council asked us to come back with a methodology to look at specific projects and the impacts of prioritizing those projects on the rates, as well as some comparisons to other cities. I'm asking for a council direction tonight on what you would like to see for a final rate. Our municipal code requires us 90 days before there's any update to the SDCs. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Matt.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to reiterate what Jeremy said. We kind of broke down all the different project. I'm sorry, you say something?
No, continue.
Oh, okay. Broke down all the projects that were in the parks SDC and all the projects that made up the water system SDC, and kind of put the cost share of each one of those projects in there so that we can look at this and maybe look at taking out a project and see how that changes the SDC. So we came up with this spreadsheet that summarizes this. Hopefully you guys can see that. And we can kind of talk about those cost shares. The other thing that we did was, like Jeremy said, was look at other cities. We kind of do a comparison of where Lowell sits compared to other cities. And I don't know, Jeremy, do you want to start with that, or?
What would the council like to discuss first?
The project list.
Project list? Okay, we'll start with the project list, Matt.
Okay. So included here are all the projects that are partially, well, are somewhat SDC funded. And so for the parks, it includes improvements to Rolling Rock and Paul Fisher Park. Those are not highly, well, hold on a second, I can't.
We're interested in.
So I'm sorry, at the bottom of that list, of the parks list, is the neighborhood parks. Those are developer funded generally, so those you'd expect to see as SDC credits, but needs to be included so that there are credits available to give. So this is the same list of projects that we talked about last time. The Paul Fisher Park replacement is not SDC eligible because it's just a replacement of existing infrastructure, so it doesn't add capacity. So do you guys want to look at taking these out, see what happens if we take out a project, or how would you like to go through here?
Go ahead.
Well, I'm not sure if my question is for you. I don't have an issue with methodology at all. I get it and understand it, and it's been continued, so it's been looked at more than once or twice. But my question was that if you look at the SDCs, so it was last updated in 2004, and I didn't have that at my disposal, so I don't know what the projects were the last time it was updated. I was curious about that, just as I'm trying to learn, because as I asked before, there's infrastructure money out there coming from the feds. If the feds knock off a $2 million portion of the water summary that's not being paid for by the residents or well, the residents, because it's all tax money, then should that be included in there? And so how does one account for that kind of planning? one of these projects I looked in, I was trying to match it up with the water master plan, because we just had gone through that. And, you know, one's not indicated for being needed, really, it says in the verbiage, till 40, 50 years out. So then I'm wondering, and again, this is just because I'm new to this, do we say at 2023, every project we would ever need till 2050, well, we're beyond that maybe, or do we say of that huge water master plan, is there a time frame, a subset, so to speak, of that then we're using the SDCs? Because otherwise, I see us pricing ourselves out of getting development, the good development that we want, because we're loading a 50-year plan essentially to today. You know, so I couldn't reconcile that because I didn't have the 2004 stuff to see if I could figure out, oh, that's how it's done, you know. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question. One of the issues that we face as we're going back through here is we're kind of updating the methodology that was originally written. So we're keeping the same math, just adding in new projects. But that original methodology was written for kind of a full build out condition, not necessarily a 20-year build out condition. And so that future EDUs, that 360 number that you see there is future EDUs. That's a full build out of the
Way out there, yeah. That we're gonna
of the
start.
city. So
Hey,
you guys are more than welcome to look at this and say that a certain project you think is far enough out there and you don't want to include it. But from my standpoint, I'm just plugging in new numbers to the old equation. And so that's why those numbers, so those big numbers, those future numbers are out there, is because that was the original methodology framework.
and I understand that, and that's why I wasn't thinking that it was a question directed to you, Matt, because I think that's a different issue for us. But again, I found a document online about, you know, the state of Oregon did a whole review of all SDC statewide and drew some conclusions, and there's some conclusions that go to what is it that you're trying to do? Are you trying to slow down development? You trying to, you know, if you put them too high, what you do is the $1 million homes keep coming up, because that's not a big percentage of that, but you effectively kill the smaller, more affordable developments, because as a percentage, it's huge, 15 grand a house, you know, when you add them all up. So I wasn't sure. So thanks for clarifying that that's what you were using, is a 50-year or full build out as of today. But I wonder if, I don't know what other people do. I don't know whether we're doing, we don't have to do what other people do. I just kind of like to cherry pick and see what everybody else does and then make it work. Well, so I'm not prepared to make a decision.
I didn't know that 50 years. Where did you get that from? 50 years? Is that on there? Did I miss it?
Well, in the water master plan, the citywide fire protection, which is relatively small, but the distribution and the water main replacements said should be completed within 20 to 50 years. But then when it talks about that one, you know more about this, Max, than I, but it said something about, it said that S ramp backbone upgrades. I have.
Yeah, all those things up there, you know, I see the possibility of those being done within the next 20 years. So I don't see those being 50 years out.
Well, that's what the water master plan says.
Yeah.
50 years.
50 years?
Yeah,
Okay.
for two of them. The other ones are within the next 10 years. So that's why I didn't understand what we should be doing. Are we gonna front load it for any expenditures over the next 50 years? That seems severe.
That sounds.
To me.
Thing is, I think we're gonna hit some of those limits up there before 50 years. And so if we're behind on collecting monies that
What
we're,
limits?
Huh?
What limits?
so I think we're gonna hit the run out of the 800 and some 80 capacity that we have before 50 years is up.
Well, we won't if we jack the SDCs up so high that nobody comes in and builds anything.
Yeah.
It's a balancing act.
Okay, I didn't know if I want to read it now or later, but I got a statement, what I feel about this, and I'd like to go over it. And what I have to say is, I support increasing the SDC rates to the dollar amount listed in the water plan. For anything less, we'll be transferring fees from the future people wanting to move the Lowell to our existing residents. The latest census showed that the Lowell residents' average salary is just over $45,000. 35% are on Medicaid or Medicare. 70% of the Lowell students are eligible for free or reduced price lunches. Incomes are much less than those falling for a $350,000 plus loan. The costs listed in our master plan are staggering. 15 years ago, this town received a $1.5 million loan to make improvements to the water and sewer plants. The upgrades and loan costs fractured this town, and the ill feeling still persists. Over $1 million in loans remain on those with final payment in 2052. 29 more years. Our system capacity is 878. We have 482 water customers. The difference is 396. Subtract the 16 for Sunset, 16 for Town Lake, 10 for their approved downtown mixed use. We're approaching the 342 number listed in the plan. Now subtract 40 to 50 if the Carroll Street development happens, 30 more for additional mixed use buildings, and at least 15 more private homes, and our capacity number decreases to 270. There are 150 acres of undeveloped lower hillside land on the northeast side of town. My crude estimate is 75 acres are below 880 feet and could be served by our current water systems. Building out the 75 acres with a conservative 4 homes per acre will add 300 homes. The capacity of our water system will have been exceeded. This doesn't include any potential development to the west. If our growth continues in 5 to 10 years, a council may be asked to act on decisions we will make. An inflation rate of 7% compounded annually at 10.8 million in 5 years would be $15 million for the cost. In 10 years, 22 million. Any grants or matching funds are unknown. Logic says the future loan will be much greater than the 1.5 million that we had 10 years ago. The town doesn't have fiscal resources and will need to pass on the increased loan payments. Maintaining the fast-paced growth we are experiencing could expedite that decision. Increasing the SDCs to 9,463 on the next 350 homes will add $3.3 million to the SD fund versus 1.6 at our current rates. The difference is one of the two is 1.7 million. I can't support increasing the water fees on existing longtime residents, homeowners who have paid their own SDC funds, the average resident making $45,000, families with children eligible for free to reduced price lunches, or the 35% on Medicare or Medicaid to subsidize improvements necessitated by new developments and new homes. We may have to include those people in future fee increases. Let's keep their fee as low as possible. That's my feelings. So,
Packed a lot in there.
I realize it's going to
Sure, I can
it may well
check
slow
everything.
development, but if you're building a $350,000 home and somebody says it's going to cost you 5 more, and right now we have a 180-day delayed program where it doesn't go up front, they can put it on a loan and put it out there, pay it out that way. I think we still have that. So I think they're still going to come. If they come slower, I don't know. But if you're buying a $300,000 home and you want to live here, and somebody says it's actually going to cost you $355,000, it's still going to go. Is my thought. Is my only thought. I just don't feel good about hitting people that's on the lower income status, and we have a lot of those, and also people that have already paid theirs to say, you know, we're going to make it easy on those people, and we're going to come back and hit you again, and you're going to pay their STC fees. that was required by this construction, so that's my thought. Yeah, but I'm all in.
I'm not tracking with what you're saying.
No, I'm just, I lost you at the end there. We're talking about raising the SDCs on new homes.
New homes.
I'm trying, maybe I'm just,
But if we take out a loan, everybody pays with fees on that.
oh, if we take out a loan.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you're
when
saying.
the
we
city
don't?
takes out a loan.
So you're saying, yeah, I didn't either. So.
Yeah.
So in other words, if we don't raise it enough,
Right,
then we take out a loan,
everybody pays.
then everybody pays, okay. So
I'm-
then
I'm
then
sorry
we
if I
as a
didn't
city have to
make
take
that
out a
clear.
loan. to
I-
make the-
I don't necessarily want to slow it down that much, but the sooner we rush to that cliff, the sooner we jump off it.
I think there's a balance here that we need to find, and that is, I think you guys have highlighted, and that is, we need to find the real priority projects that we want to work on. And that allows us to possibly lower the SDCs down to where we're not chasing off developers. And we're making, homes affordable for the folks that need that level of pricing for their homes. And at the same time, we also need to be able to supplement our fiscal well-being to the point to where we can manage our infrastructure improvements and not overburden existing homeowners and both. And I think there's a balance there that we can find. I think Maureen's right. I think we're shooting for the moon to come up with this $9,800 to $2,800 number. We definitely need to find the right amount of SDCs to support our infrastructure improvements that we absolutely have to have for the city. But I think we can find some lower numbers than these, but still offer the new developers to contribute their fair share to the needed projects. So I think we start with looking at what's really important to us and what is, just like we did in our goal setting mission for 2023. I think we need to do the same thing for our projects that we've got in this lower section in terms of the summary for the upcoming projects for the parks and the water. I think that's kind of where we're at.
I agree
that's the
with
balance
that.
we
I
need
think
to
we need
find.
to look at the parks, because when we put this out, this was a mega population type park that we were wanting everything in it to be everything perfect. And I think that we need to, what does this town really need? What do we, and so I could see adjusting, looking at that because we already have so much vandalism going on in these things. Do we really want to put in more facilities that they could be vandalized? So.
Well, I mean, and I don't think we're talking just parks either. We're talking about all the projects.
The sewer master plan, right on the heels of this, we're gonna have the same discussion. So, and it's, it's not just one SDC, it's the sum total.
Yeah.
It's 15 grand, it's not 9 grand.
Right.
Or
And
more.
not only can we do that, but finding a way to maybe graduate it up on a slower basis does not do it all at once. I mean, eventually, but 15 grand is.
No, I agree. It's a lot of money. I don't disagree with you there.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, we've got the numbers up here on what the SDCs are for funding everything. Does the council have a number in mind that you feel is more reasonable? And if so, we can go through and start cutting stuff out to bring it down to your target.
Not at this meeting.
Yeah.
That's why when we were doing this water master plan, that's why I had the question about what if things change? Can we change that? And the answer was, sure we can. But you don't do it on the tail end with the rate and then shove it back. You look at the plan and go from there. So I think we would need to look at the water master plan. And it won't take long because we just went through the whole thing. So it's not like it's coming to us 20 years cold and hasn't been updated, but do I feel qualified to, go and say, no, Mac, you can live without, number 4. heck no. But there's gotta be some options there, and we still don't have an answer about if we go for grant money. You know, do we count on the sewer, water and sewer extension was paid half by the feds.
Mhm.
So it wasn't all on the city.
Yeah, that's.
We took advantage of that, and there's opportunities like that, you don't have to cut out a whole project, maybe half of it's funded through these infrastructure grants and that sort of stuff coming in, and that's what I'm saying, I don't know how you build that in, but I certainly, if it was my own money, I would have a clue and not just line up, hey, here's what I want over the next 40 years, and I'm gonna start making a payment today on that loan to myself. It's like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Because otherwise you're hosing the people today that are gonna be, and gun, like you said, they're already paying, and so I just. That's why when we're doing these water master plans and park development plans and stuff, you have to keep this in mind, because it's always gonna come down to money on the taxpayers, and what is it that we can afford, and how can we stage it, and that sort of thing.
I agree with Maureen, you start with the projects, not with the budget. You don't start and go, our target is to hit $5,000 or our target is to hit $4,000. You really need to go to what's important and what do we need to get done. And then to offer the honest truth to the taxpayers and future developers on what that's going to cost. Because we have to operate within reality. We're kind of creating a false paradigm to say, we want to shoot for X in our STCs, X dollars in our STCs, and see what we can get out of it.
So how does that process look like to you, so that I can, have some clarity?
In terms of the water summary, I think that, that Max is gonna have to offer a lot of value to prioritization of these particular tasks and projects that we're looking at here, in accordance with other folks that contribute to the city's knowledge base on decision-making processes. But I think Max is probably up to speed on which of these are like the must-haves right now versus the should-haves, or the could-haves or the would-haves.
Well, and if I could say something real quick, I did work with Matt and his team, and in the plan, we did the, should be done first. We prioritized, like Maureen was saying, some of those items were beyond 20. We're just gonna call them beyond 20 because the master plan captures the next 25 years. It's kind of how Matt and the team did it. So, I mean, you can clearly see on there, and everybody knows what the highest priority is because we need it for the growth to happen, right? So we've done that back and forth, and they're in a pretty good order right there. I've met with Matt and his team, and we went back and forth before they even give you guys the first draft on, what needs to happen for us to continue to grow, but what also needs to happen right now for us to continue to provide what we already have, referring to the water mains and such things like that. So I think you guys have a good plan there, and obviously I would give my opinion on it. But one thing I did want to bring up, I was not here obviously for the 04 SDCs, but both the master plans, water and sewer were done at that time, and the upgrades. And the same kind of process that we're using right now was done. We showed full build out 20 years, and you guys all know we did 2 upgrades. And then we've collected fees since then, and everybody knows building slowed way down. It's just recently back up to low, but I'm going to refer to the water plant specifically. Out of most of those projects that we had identified in the expired master plan, right, that we were collecting fees for, we never did any of those. Not some of the plans, but we never did like the new set basin expansion. That was one of the things that, if you looked at that spreadsheet, it was a line item, the cost of it, the percent spread over the growth of the next, there was no next 20 years. It was, what's the expected growth in this cycle, So yes, to be fair, a lot of people currently here in new builders, like such as myself, like who moved here, are paying for those things, but now we've shifted to a new master plan because our other one's expired. So I was going back to 04 because you talked about the North Shore extension, that was identified in our plans, right? Expanding capacity, but it was a project that we kind of did outside of the plans because we got the funding for it. We had the money, we took a loan for the remainder of it.
And so that's the point. It was taken out of this, and the FACs weren't built with that on.
Yep, and that's what I was saying when you said, well, what if we get funding, what if we get some infrastructure funding from the federal government? And let's just say, in my opinion, the highest priority is the reservoir, which is ironic because if you don't have the right lines to get up there, but you know, with the new reservoir, it has to come infrastructure to get it there, right? So the reservoir would do a lot of things. It would totally release the northeast side of town for development. I'm not saying it's gonna happen, but it would make it available. So let's say that we got let's just make it easy. Let's just say we got like a 50% grant or something to help that move forward. And we knew that was gonna happen. That's like you're saying, that's something you can't predict, you know, are we gonna get $100,000? We're gonna get $1 million, you know, so it's hard when it comes down to numbers like this because, and also those numbers that Matt gave us, you know, in 5 years, they're gonna be more and in 10 years. And if it's something we wait to the end of the master plan, which could happen with growth, you never know, then who knows, that it could be double that price. So I definitely think it's a big decision to make. And like I said, I'm here for you guys. I'm fine with doing whatever we need to do to come to a good resolution on this.
So then I got a question for you, because one of the things that it said was about the, and I have no idea what this is, SRAM backbone distribution projects. So that's the big one on here, right? That's $3 million.
Let Matt.
Well, no, I don't need to explain. What I'm
Okay.
saying is, Carol,
The priority,
it says that should be done over a 50-year planning period. But you can do it incrementally because it's 5 foot.
right,
So why don't we consider
this 20-year plan, is that what you're saying, like,
25?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was gonna say.
yeah, we
That
can do
kind of
that.
stuff. And maybe, again, I only know that because somebody wrote it in here. I don't know if that applies to anything else on here. So that's all I'm saying is,
Just instead
that
of-
might be how you do it in your own kind of life, is you do what you can and you still keep your eye on the future and you test and adjust and.
I agree.
It's like when we put the water line for Main Street there, it was 1 block long, $100,000 basically.
Unplanned.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and then one over there on Lake,
Lakeview.
side, Lakeview, it was another $100,000 for 1 block long. So, you know, whenever you start looking at how many miles we have, 2.9 million, that's, you know, we probably can come to that pretty quickly.
Because I don't even think we could get that done that quick. I mean. if we
No,
had
and it's,
money
like you say,
tomorrow,
it's all,
it's
all
all
along
primary focus. It just-
Yeah, then we just do
we,
that. and-
we wouldn't be doing it, that's probably unless we were doing the streets also, would be my thought.
So Maureen, I don't disagree with anything you're saying. I think it's good governance to go through all this. But I will push back a little bit and say, I do think we need to talk about the money and what our goal line is. Because I hear the concern that we're gonna push development away. Without knowing what the market really is for developers, it's hard for me to know, are we really accomplishing that goal? Because looking at the comparator list of Lowell to other cities, we're pretty shockingly low already. And even implementing this full system would only put us at about the midpoint. So I'm not as concerned at the moment. And it would be hard for me to go through and rank these things in priority lists if I don't actually even know what our aspirational SDC goal is. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I understand your point. I really do. And that's the dilemma. Because we're not talking about hundreds of dollars. We're talking millions of dollars. And you don't get too many do-overs. You know? And the other thing is they all add up. You can't look at one of these SDCs in a vacuum because they add together and they're all in at the same time when the person fills out their building permit, I assume. So again, I see things like that and I just think that is a way to adapt. I don't have a number, you know, because I think you don't know the effect of it until you implement it. And there's quite a few conclusions about the difficulty in that. You want affordable housing, but you want to plan for the future and there's one line in particular that I think is pretty enlightening, that says, oh, I can't. But you know, you have to live with what you do, but you don't know it until 10 years out. And that's tough, you know. But that's why it would have been, I would have liked to have that discussion while we were working on the water master plan about what the effect, because ultimately that's where you end up is the SPCs, but we never talked about that. we always talk about these projects and isn't this good? And we just tally it up and we go, great, there's $10 million of projects, but we don't ever get to how it's gonna roll out. And so we put our stamp on it and go along merrily, and then we come up with this, and then we, you know, say, oh, geez, it's gonna be $10,000 for a house to do this project list.
And we have the same, build out capacity for our sewer as we do our fresh water, so we're gonna get a number there probably also, it's gonna be.
Well, it could be different.
Well, yeah, the plan that Sil was currently putting together, we get a much better understanding of the wastewater plan.
Yeah.
We're in a much better position as far as treatment, you know, getting it down there is an issue. I've told you guys about that for years, but as far as treatment capacity, we are much more flexible than we are treatment of water. So, yeah, we could take a lot more homes in currently down there, you know, it's just getting it down there, so, yeah.
But I was looking at some of these on here and, looking at Sweet Home's budget, they say in the next 5 years, they need $35 million for their wastewater, you know, and, you know, I don't know what they have now, but, and then they already have $7 million in outstanding loans on their current water plant and $7 million on their sewer plant. So, you know, there's some cities that, look at some monster money. Coburg on here, they've got big SDCs, and then, their tax rate is 3.75, whereas theirs 2.16. So, you know, and that place is filling up with people. So I don't see people running away from our size increase, but, you know, we need to be fair to our town, is my only thought. It's big numbers, and, they steer it, so.
Well, I think that's one thing we can do with water master plan is at least look and see about that staging to not just prioritize about what's important, but the timing. You know, do we need to start to increase the SDCs today for something that's not going to be completed until 40 years down the road in that last 10 years? That's my question. For the water one. Doesn't apply to parks. I have a different question from that.
And if you look at our, our growth plan, whatever it's called, you know, we've been so slow for so long, you know, or that, it doesn't probably show that big, so it probably doesn't show us ever reaching the, 900 whatever capacity of our system for years and years and years, so,
It's been that way every time. The forecasts are always much greater than what we realize. So far. No, it's built in, though. That's the thing. That's already planned for.
I just see the lower hillside there. There's only two owners over there. And whether the two owners decide to build or not to build, whether they want to keep it a green belt or put in or to sell it off or whatever. But there's 150 acres over there owned by two people. And I don't know what they're gonna do, so. They can either make subdivisions or else just keep it a green belt, so. Yeah, we'd be
Within the
collecting way too much money if they don't fill it out.
You know, it comes back to the housing analysis, because we really don't know what we have.
Yeah.
That's built.
So maybe instead of starting at the top end of elimination or prioritization, you start at the bottom end, which is what do we absolutely not need right now? And what aren't we going to do in the next X spring of time and agree that we plan our SDCs based on a certain time window, and anything outside that, we're not going to include in our SDC needs, and then try to eliminate some projects that we feel that just don't make fiscal sense based on the situation.
We can't always have everything.
So you're gonna control growth that way. Risk really is what-
I didn't say I wanted to.
If we're not going to continue to build out, then we're not going to be able to, we can reach our limit, we can't go past it though. If you say we pick this, we can do it. I'm trying to not to be, keep with you, but I'm just saying we're going to, if we just.
If we're already planning to do something for 20 years on, why do we need to fund it right now? We need to start funding it maybe a little bit later down the road, so we can afford to fund the things we need to and kind of find that balance.
Because within this next decade, we're gonna know if we're gonna get some of this infrastructure money that may knock some of these things off, maybe that frees up money to go down to the next 20 years, next decade past that.
I didn't say it very well, but that's thinking through is if we look at it in terms of time frames, then maybe we can do this incrementally without putting ourselves in
Like I say, if we
a no.
limit what we're gonna do, what we're gonna construct out, then that's gonna eventually limit growth.
Well, maybe one more look at the projects and.
And that's not a bad, I'm not saying it's a
Oh,
bad
no, I
thing.
know, I'm just saying, one more look at.
We
those-
can't build out that quick anyway, Don, there's no way you can.
5 to 10 years,
Huh?
5 to 10 years.
No way, I don't think we can handle it, no, there's no way.
I'm not saying it's not possible,
No.
that a lot would have to happen. But not, I'm not saying it's impossible, I'm just saying that.
Well, with all the time and money in the world, nothing's impossible, but we don't have the time, stat time and the
You look
money.
at the time that we came out of the building moratorium, which was 2016, remember, because it was laid after the upgrades. Till now, if you compare it from 16 to now, so 7 years, you know, we're still behind where our projected growth was. But this last 2 years have been huge, you know, and look what's already in the bag, like you talked about for the next 2 years. We got 3 potentials coming in, you know, so it's, yeah,
You'll be busy enough, just.
we are nothing moratorium at all.
Guess my thought is, we may come back to this 9,000 again, but maybe one more run through and look at it. We just make us all comfortable with moving. Just because we have come up with more questions and more concerns.
And I just going forward, I think that needs to be part of the discussion when we're talking about the master plans, is how that affects, you know, like on the sewer, how's that's gonna affect the SBCs to pay for, because that's kind of an afterthought. And it's real easy to put a whole project list together when you don't have to talk about how much it will cost and how much that's gonna cost. citizens.
Mr. Mayor, if I may,
Okay, go ahead.
one thing that I'm hearing is that there's an interest in reviewing in more detail the project list and understanding the importance of the projects, the potential timing of the projects, as well as understanding the long-term planning horizon, especially when it comes to financing. Does that sound fair?
I think on parks and water both.
Okay, if that's the case, then I believe city engineer and I could schedule a work session where we could have these kinds of discussions. We could prepare a presentation, spend some more time on this.
I think that's a good idea. That way we have a plan, you know, because this looks like, this is where we want to be in the 20 years, but the 20-year plan, way of saying that, I heard 50. And so I'm thinking, okay, if we're planning for where we want to be in 20 years, then we should fund to be there in 20 years. It's just the hard numbers I see. But if we're talking some of these things out to 50 years, then okay, then we don't maybe need to collect as fast. So.
And I just would make everybody more comfortable.
And for me, the parks is different than the water and sewer, because that's a totally different
Oh,
deal.
they're different deals, but I think it had a bigger wish list than the water did. The parks it was a pie in the sky, you know, what all would you like? And like, I think, like you said, you know, this was our list, you know, this is our list of stuff. Would you like to have it? Yes.
Right.
Okay.
There's never
You
a
have
big
price-
plan
you have a
that says-
price on it. It was the same with the library when we did that. Would you like to have a mega library or an old outhouse there? You know, and so, everybody wanted mega, you know, we wanted paneling, we had open roof ceiling and all. We had all kinds of stuff going on. And then, you know, there was no way we could afford it. So, I agree.
It surprised me to see the park summary come up to 20% of the water sewer infrastructure.
Yeah, I think that's, you've got a lot of paving, you've got a whole lot of things going over there that street to put in. That right now can't feed out onto North Shore or kangaroo or whatever, so, you know, there's a lot of things that we built, that was built into it that, maybe can't be completed, and then, there's two parts to it, then there's the part that we're working on now, and then the front half of it, so it's 1.1 million, something like that, 1.2, that's a lot of money for a small town for a park, you know?
Especially when we're surrounded by natural resources.
Yeah, and the people get in their cars and drive to places that, they like, no, actually,
We're not a concrete jungle here that doesn't.
well, we
really
can't
have
even
much space.
afford to fix our outhouses, or clean, whatever they call it, restrooms, there you go.
You can fix them, you just can't fix them fast enough.
You know,
You beat them in.
you gotta get a post for boys and a bush for girls, you know.
Says Dawn, not.
Get that picture of me.
There's those trees, those 1-inch trees. Tree designate, one of, you know, yeah, okay. I've gotten a little bit off track, I'll admit that, so, but, I just, when I see big numbers, I get scared, let's put it that way. Even if they're my numbers. Anyway,
Okay.
I think, what you said is a good idea, we need to look at these, put a time frame on them, and I think that would give us a better understanding what we need, how soon, and things like that, you know, and, we can maybe adjust accordingly, so I think that's a good plan.
Good, that sounds fine to me. Thank you, Matt. I'll be reaching out to you soon.
Thank you, Matt. Does anybody else have anything for Matt? Okay, not hearing anything, you have a good evening now.
Yep. Thank you, guys. Have a good evening.
Okay, planning commission, we have 2 volunteers to work on our planning commission. Mr. Cottle, you want to introduce the applicants?
Yes, I have 2 applicants who applied for expired seats. One is Suzanne Kinsley. She is currently a planning commissioner applying to continue serving, and the other one is Carmen Trimble, and I believe Carmen is with us tonight. If the council wishes to hear from Carmen or ask any questions.
You related to the Kathy Trimble for the, okay, thank you. The common name on it. Thank you. I read the application and, glad to see you. Put your name in, so. Anybody have any questions for her? There's like.
It says 3 applicants in the header.
One was out of town. The third one, we already have one out of town first, we only have
Gotcha.
one
Okay,
out of
okay.
town
Yeah.
on the
Okay.
commission. So,
So will this fill us up?
This would fill the planning commission. We have full staff.
I do have a question, you don't mind?
Sure.
I don't know if there is a, time that I could start later than March 1st, or I'm not sure if there's some sort of delay that I am committed to a team that was put together a few months ago, and they meet on Wednesdays. So I'm not sure how flexible the start date is.
I don't know what you have coming up in March. Do you have anything? Well, if they would have a quorum, so one person could be out tonight, I would think. Does that sound right to
How
you?
long would you be?
It's at least through April on Wednesdays. And do they meet once a month or twice a month?
It depends on our activity. Up until the past few months, it's been pretty slow, so they'll an average maybe 3 or 4 meetings per year.
Oh, yeah, see, that's great. I was looking through the minutes though, and it was like every other week. we were
Right now,
meeting,
it's pretty busy.
and I was like, I just don't know if I can commit to that, so,
Yeah, they were in the middle of a big,
okay.
Right.
And how are we now? Are we?
we've been,
At a
I
lull.
think.
Well, we still have a lot of development activity coming along, and I probably for the next year or so, I anticipate busier than average workload for the planning commission,
Once a month.
maybe once every other month.
Yeah, that would be great. I just wasn't prepared to make that. Twice a
There's-
month
yeah,
for the rest
There's
of
a
the
training thing that he puts you through, and you get speed on things like that. also.
Okay, great.
Right.
So you don't walk in cold.
Okay, great. So as of March 1st, I'm good to be on the team, right? I mean, do I need to be somewhere on March 1st, since that's the next planning commission?
We do have a meeting on on the first Wednesday in March. Is that the March first?
Yes.
March first, yes.
So. I don't know. I don't want to say I'm gonna be there and then not be there, and so I may have to respectfully withdraw my application, or if there's some flexibility. So,
I believe there's, Mr. Mayor, we would have 4 members. So that would not be detrimental to having a quorum.
The last meeting had 3 people there, so.
Okay.
So they need to have 3 for a quorum, so, there will be absences from time to time.
okay, well, that's all
Yeah,
that I wanted to.
okay.
Thank you for.
And Mayor, it looks like one of the other applicants is signed on. If council has any questions.
Not for Suzanne, but do they pick their own chairman?
Yes, that will be one of the first items of business at the next meeting.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion that, we appoint Suzanne Kinsley and Carmen Rendell to Tremble, sorry. To the,
Yeah. Motion by Gail, second by Maureen, to appoint Suzanne Kinsley and Carmen Trimble to the planning commission. We have other discussion, questions, thoughts? Okay, all those in favor of Suzanne Kinsley and Carmen Trimble being assigned to the planning commission, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you for volunteering. And get with Jeremy on the dates and training and things like that. That's
I'll be in touch on setting up a planning commissioner for you guys.
next thing is resolution 798, authorized transfer in appropriated funds.
I'm requesting councilor approval tonight, or city council approval tonight of a line item transfer of $5,621. This is within the water fund. This will transfer funds from the contingency account into the software and water system improvement accounts. The reasons for the unanticipated expenses are in the software account, the failure of the SCADA system. In the system improvements account, the need to purchase new water meters for home construction. There are also some unanticipated water line extensions for certain residences. After looking at the latest financial statements, it appears that the water fund is going to be on track to exceed budgeted amounts by fiscal year end. Over the next few weeks and into spring, I'll be working with staff to develop a plan to ensure that the water fund remains within appropriations, and I'll be presenting that plan to you at a later date.
Where are we at on the SCADA? For a full system, that's like 300,000, right?
That is for the Cadillacs. That has all the telemetry to fully automate the water tanks. And
That's the full price of the whole system, right?
That, like Jeremy said, that is, replacing the current and then for the future, water tower, everything that isn't quite in our master plan.
And that's what we have in our SDCs, 300,000
correct,
right now.
right. So right now, Max has a quote for, what is it, 40,000 range?
45,000.
So that would meet our current needs.
Would we take that out of the SCADA, or I mean, out of the SDC fund, or that we have to match, or?
I don't believe that's SDC.
So we'd have
eligible.
to, we'd have to come up with our money on that.
Grants, financing, or pay as you go.
Okay, that'd be a good trial run to see what kind of money's out there. Any other questions about the transfer of funds? That's staying within the water fund, right?
Correct.
we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 798, authorizing the transfer of appropriations within funds.
Okay, motion by Dale, second by Jimmy. Motion to approve resolution 798, a resolution authorizing the transfer of appropriations within fund. Further discussion, thoughts, questions? All those in favor of motion to resolution 798, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Next one up. Present it. Oh, no, page 150, land and water conservation grant, Rolling Log Park. You want to discuss that, Mr. Connell?
I'm requesting direction from the city council tonight on the next steps that you'd like to take in our efforts to obtain a 100% financing, grant financing for the phase 1 of Rolling Rock Park. I have a summary of the milestones that we have met to achieve this goal. Following my agenda sheet item, where we are right now is we have 50% of the project secured through the Land and Water Conservation Fund. That requires a 50% match. One option that we could achieve that is trying for the third time to obtain a local government grant program match. I met with the managers of both grant programs a few weeks ago, and they had some ideas on how we could make one more shot towards this. The LGGP grant manager suggested that I submit 2 applications, one for the big project and one for a small project. The small project is easier to get. It doesn't go to the full committee, it's just a staff review. If we were to go with the small project, they believe that the playground would be the most competitive option for us. So the way that I would do this is I would put in the large grant, the small grant. I would say if we get the large grant, we're not getting the small grant. I also asked them about some of the other ideas that council had, like a basketball court. That wouldn't work. That would be outside of the scope of what's already been approved. And that would require a new application. So we would have to go with the application that I already have here. They said it's a strong application. I provided the scoring criteria and it scored highly. So all I have to do is punch a button to submit it again. I'd update the budget numbers for inflation. But at this point, that's all I would do. And I'm asking, since this wasn't on the priorities resolution, I'm asking if this is something you want to try one more time.
Seems like worth giving a try.
Yeah.
You had 75,000. I see your playground was 53,000 basically. We're gonna use the other 20.
But,
Is that a restroom?
It was more than that. The playground is,
Is that small pavilion also?
no,
That's not it. I see playground. here.
playground is 131,000.
So on page 165, I see 52,729.
That is,
Oh, there's another playground here, 131,000. Okay. I see that. So it'd be part of that.
so that is the LGGP funded part. And then the project budget worksheet on page 5 of the grant application, the 130,000, that is the entire budget.
I'd say give it a shot.
I'm gonna be a no vote. I'm gonna be a no vote because I think there's too many things about this project list that needs to be rethought, and it's happened all before. COVID hit and all our pressures for development. And we're not being able to cover really the basics right now. We've got some important things for development, and I just don't think that we have the bandwidth to take this on. I just really don't. It's usable. It's not like we're talking about a failure in our water system or something in sewer that is an absolute top priority. We live in a beautiful place. There's places we can recreate, and I think that I just don't think we have the bandwidth, and I think it needs to be relooked at. And so And that's where I am.
even for free money?
It's not free money. It always requires something on the city's part, whether it's time and priority over something else. And we're not able to even cover some of the basics that we're doing right now. You know, I had a occasion to go through a bunch of newsletters because I was looking for something else. And, you know, the code enforcement is a quality of life issue. It really is. And I live in a neighborhood where we have an issue. And I turned in it's a huge issue. And I turned in I did the rules, I did it by, written report and stuff, and, you know, I'm seeing more of that, and, we need to protect what we have and enhance, and we've got, these development projects that I think are a priority. We've got the library coming on, we've got some good things going on. We're gonna stretch Jeremy so thin, he's gonna fail. He's gonna fail. And I don't think we can afford to set him up to fail. Shame on us if we do. And it's not free money.
Should we just go with the 75 request then, or not either one of them?
I wouldn't go for either one because I think it needs to be looked at. I mean, we got $900,000 in there for turf and stuff. I mean, it's,
No, I'm not gonna disagree with that, but I think it's too large also. You know, it's just, when you talk about, how much money it was and everything, what they want to do, I can't disagree with that, but,
I think I do think what's missing in that park is a playground. I think that's, I watched that park day after day after day after day, and it's it's missing that anchor. You know, all the other stuff is kind of extraneous, but it's kind of missing that anchor to get people to go there.
you know, the one requirement of playgrounds for small children is fencing. And you can't, that's right next to the bus stop. I've talked to moms who, they won't take their children there because you can't make it to the street faster than your 4-year-old. And it's just, it's not a good site there without having, we've got traffic on 3 sides. And I'm not sure that's a place for a playground. We've got Lundy, we've got Paul Fisher, and we've got the marina for playgrounds. For a small town, that's pretty good. You
I
know?
agree with Paul Fisher, where most parents will take their kids.
Yeah,
And,
and so
they like the
without,
marina.
without fence and right next to the bus stop there and right quick on a grab to 58. Boy, oh boy, that's a rough spot for a little kid playground. The only thing worse is to put it up against Forest. That's the only thing worse. Put it against something that people should play later. Well, you don't have snatchers. You've got kids that drown, and that's awful.
I think with the intention of the playground, we have a fence on it. In that. So we could modify that at this point.
Because we decided that.
We would have to find that outside. Sorry.
But it
Like
looked
whatever.
goofy, it looked like a cave. Yeah.
Yeah.
If we decide not to do these improvements, I think that, that's the one area where we can offset the SDCs from water to parks. That it still come up with pretty much the same number. Water goes up, parks comes down, because if we can't do it, if we don't intend to do it,
Well, we just need to read.
because it's a major production out there. It's bigger than, a lot bigger than City Hall, was and all that kind of stuff. It's monster. And you're right, it would take a lot of time. We'd have to have.
It's not on our priority. It's usable.
I agree with you. I'm not gonna disagree with you one bit on that.
If it wasn't usable, there would be a pit in there and it's a hazard.
But I think that opposite side, if we look at the park SDCs, see where are we going with that?
This is all based on that grant we got.
I know, but still,
Match, and so
we-
we're
we,
just still talking about, we just let it all go. And maybe that's just the thing.
It'll come back around.
I know, I'm just saying that's what we're really talking about, and that might be just fine. Give me what we can say.
The only alternative feedback that I would add is that
I'm generally supportive of resubmitting with the positive feedback you've received and the low amount of work to at least resubmit. I do support that, and I do hear from people with small children like ours that we need something in that park for that demographic group. It's just not a good park for those people, and if you don't know about the other parks, or if you don't walk around, it's just kind of this black hole for little children. So I do think we need something.
But if there's enough people worried about, you know, I have grandkids. I had not really given that a lot of thought, because we usually go where the playground is. So I just hadn't thought about it, but that is a spot where a little kid could get out in the street pretty darn fast.
What I see on that mark is it's a park 3 days out of the year in Blackberry Gym, and now we're talking about not even having Blackberry Gym. Other than that, it's just a place for people to walk back and forth from the coffee stand, to the post office, or things like that, so.
The green area.
It's a green space. It's, you know, people walk through there with their dogs. And, you know, it's fun.
When we do it, I think we're gonna do it right and do what will best suit the town, but it's just, we're overloaded. Everybody's got a lot to do.
Okay.
That's just my two cents.
Mayor, I am requesting a vote from the council on which direction you'd like to take this.
I have another question before we get started that. If we were to receive the grant, is there a time period to use the grant? If we were to not apply for the grant, is this a yearly application?
Could you say that? I'm not sure I understand.
If we receive the grant, is there a time period to use the funds?
There is a time limit.
What is that time?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Well, remember, there's two grants. I mean, you're
Yes,
talking about
yeah.
two grants, so.
Yeah. And if we're, if we choose to not go forward with the grant, is this a yearly application process? Like we could pick this up down the road with the scope board, be ready and reapply annually.
Typically it is. Last year, they didn't have a grant period for LGGP, and that was due to funding issues. So typically, there is an annual funding cycle in both. One is a National Park Service, so that depends on federal funding. But typically, they do open yearly unless there are issues related to funding.
And you're not sure what the use time limit is for if you receive the grant.
I'm not sure what that time limit is.
But it's not gonna be a long time. It's not like you're gonna have years.
You don't need 5 years.
No, and so that just,
And sometimes they'll work with you, of course, you know, if there's unforeseen stuff, but it's,
Can you explain, she talked about fencing, is this thing having fencing around it or not?
There's no fencing around it.
Okay,
We would have to, correct, we would have to.
It was like it was before, kind of on this end of the basket or the parking lot. It's where it was before, it was towards the north end of the parking lot, if I remember right. The one that's out there now.
It's on the park.
Yeah, it's out there where the high school parking lot is right now.
Correct.
To the north end of where that would be,
Correct.
kind of out
Sort
there.
of, sort of in
west,
the middle.
west of there.
It's kind of in the middle of the, yeah,
yes, no.
okay. And for Marine's, consideration on that. Would you just give that over to a contractor to do, or how involved would you be in it? I want to know.
We have hired a landscape architect to be our project manager on this. So we would have a contract with him for the project scope. The landscape architect would be a project manager, much like Kurt was the managed construction for the city hall and library.
Would that money, is that for the architect, is that included in the 75,000? Or would that be something we'd have to fund?
It would be, it would be,
He'd have to shrink the size to make 75, is what
Correct.
I'm saying.
Correct.
That's sort of playground.
But Jeremy was still very, very involved with the
There's still
library.
grant accounting, there's
Yeah.
grant reports, there's projects.
that is true,
Yeah,
that is true.
I'm
so,
up to my eyeballs in those.
he's gonna have to manage the project manager.
Somebody should.
Yeah.
excited about the child's playground when you have one catty corner, you know, and, but I understand what he's saying, that we need something out there, for the, have a reason that children go through, you know, your thought about it? I just want to hear your thought. Are you interested in doing it?
Here's my thoughts.
Okay.
To keep the process going. That's a few hours of work with our landscape architect and engineer to revise the cost estimates. I'll plug in those new numbers, fire it off, we're back in August. If they say no, then we'll go back to the drawing board. If they say yes, then we're looking at springtime next year before we really start getting busy on this. And, I feel, capable of being able to manage that. It's not this is $400,000 that we have right now. It's not every day that something like that falls into your lap.
If you got the big one, that was really scary for what you have to do. The 75,000 is what I'm more thinking of, the little one. That just, I don't. If we are given the things, we have to accept it. We can say we change our mind.
You run a risk of being a poor
It'd be
applicant.
better to shelve it and wait until later to apply than it would be to
Well,
apply.
when it's coming to a termination date, right? Or is it to be just open for eternity?
The one that we've secured,
Yeah,
they're just waiting on us.
if we don't say something, do they withdraw it or they just leave it open?
They will eventually, but they're being patient with us.
Okay. Whatever the council.
Well, if you want to kick it off, just to see whether this goes up or down, I'm fine with that. I'll make a motion that we decline to go forward with the grants at this time. And take a look at the projects and resubmit an application at a future date. For lack of second, that's up to council.
Do we have a second? Okay, failed without a second.
I'm thinking.
Okay. And then we'll keep it open.
If it dies for lack of second, then somebody else has to make it.
I'll make a second on that. I think Maureen offers a lot of logic in our situation. I think we have a lot of iron in the fire. I think that it's really easy to shelve this project and save the scope of work and at a later date, those budgetary changes to, account for inflation, to resubmit this at a future date. And it sounds like that's a good possibility. We have a lot of business to take care of in the next year or two. Not just here, I mean, city council, planning commissions, everyone. I would love to see a playground there. I'd love to see a basketball court there. I'd love to see some progression on that park. But I think the emotional thought of wanting that playground there versus the logic part of we do have some other options for children in the community right now. Play the long game for a better game for everybody. So I second the point.
Okay. Yeah, motion is second to not request the funding. We have further discussion. All those in favor of not requesting the funding for the park, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. You want to do a roll call vote there, Mr. Connell?
Mayor Bennett,
No.
Councilor Harris, Councilor Stratus,
Or yes, sorry.
Yeah, wait a minute.
No, no. to-
What are you voting?
That's the question again.
I'm saying,
But yes, also.
Yes.
yes, we want to. About Mark, go to the application, yes.
Yes, yes.
Tim? I'll start this all over. The motion,
This has been.
the motion is to withdraw the application. So an I means I am going to withdraw these applications. Mayor Bennett.
Aye.
Councilor Harris.
Aye.
Councilor Stratus.
Aye.
Councilor Weathers.
Aye.
Councilor Murray. No.
Okay. Anything else? Other business? Public comments?
Yeah, I'd like to just mention, you talked about the parks. It would be nice if we could have another review of this with the Parks Committee. You know, this is a critical point that is going to affect the future forever. We can't go back once some of these things have been done. And it is, and I appreciate you saying no, because it's a tall order. You know, it's a big wish list from the people who put this together. It's only a wish list. We don't have to go with it. And it really needs to be scaled back to some degree and re-looked at, I think, to consider it down quite a bit, because it's a massive project. It's a lot of money, and do we really need all that? You know, we're a small community. We're not certain, and as you said previously, when we addressed it earlier, not at this meeting, but it really needs to be looked at and re-scaled, because they put these things together, these groups, thinking that we have millions of dollars and we have income coming to the city. We really don't, from other sources other than grants if we're lucky. And we don't have a tax base big enough to fund these. And we have a lot of projects that need to be funded, as we've said. Plus the fact we don't know what's coming up in an emergency that we suddenly have to go to the populace to get money. So I think it's a good idea to suspend it and have a look at it. And I would appreciate being part of the Parks Committee to let us just have another look at this again. It was a long time since we saw it. And just kind of, what do the Parks Committee think about this? It would be nice to include us as we are the Parks Committee. So I would appreciate it by our next Park Committee meeting, if we could have a look at these drawings. We can always come together, because I can see when I looked at that, basically, some real issues, which I don't want to get into now, it's not time for it, but I think it really needs to be looked at and scaled down. So I appreciate if you just come up with us. Smart thinking. Thank you.
I'd like to say something.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jimmy, for saying no to that. As somebody who has raised 3 kids for years, that area of town needs something. No, it does not need a playground. We have Paul Fisher, we have the elementary school, and we have that. We need a basketball court. We need something for the middle school to do, for the high schoolers to do. Not these little kids that they have plenty of places to go. We need a pickleball court there. So our aging community has a community place to go to. That can be two games in one fell swoop right there. Doesn't need a fence around it, but we need something for our middle schoolers to do. They're on the stage doing God knows what, leaving massive amounts of garbage, just having nothing to do. You can't tell me, oh, we have a basketball court a half a mile down the road at the Marina Vista. No one's gonna walk down there. We need something in the middle of the city. We need something for our middle schoolers and high schoolers to do.
So just so you know, Carmen, we put getting a basketball court at that part of the city priority for the city council for this.
Great.
Year.
All I've heard is playground. I don't want to see another playground.
Terry said though, is that we can't change the application, otherwise we would probably head in that direction right now, to change the application process to do a basketball court instead of playground. We will probably be looking at changing that scope of work to ask for that request, that grant request.
Yeah.
And he asked if we could do the basketball court with the city, if we can.
So we have to redo.
So that's
everything.
why we were.
We definitely have.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This,
It's missing. We have nothing for our middle schools and our high schools to do. Nothing.
It's not that we don't want those things.
years ago, when the state part of basketball court cut down,
That was this.
I was going to suggest we do nothing.
Well, that was a very disappointing.
Correct.
I've been here for 25 years, and that was one of the low points of this town. So, thank you, pickleball court, pickleball is what we need to have. If you want community, you need to get the adults, the grandparents, everybody to be part of it. These kids with, these parents, young parents with small kids, they have their own little community. It's us 50-year-olds and above that, you know, we kind of lose touch when we don't have our kids in school anymore. So we want to have a community vibe about it. Okay.
Back with the vandalism at the bathrooms. Do we know who maybe is doing it? What age group?
We have an idea.
Would that be middle schoolers and high schoolers?
We'll have to get back to you on that. We have cameras in the park, as you guys know, but myself and staff, we do not know everybody that works here. Or, I'm sorry, lives here.
You get the teachers together, they'll figure it out.
Anything else? Yes. Go ahead. Would you include a shuffleboard court? Yeah, I'd like Jeremy to explain to me. There was something that came up about you're getting together with the landscape architect to reevaluate, I believe, the cost. The trees or the planting. You were gonna get a
For
quote.
Paul Fisher,
Yes. You said you were getting a
different
quote.
trees,
I thought all that was done.
different trees. I think in your thing, you said that, the trees that initially was asked for were this big around. And so they want some this big around, and the ones they had is this big around for a different, variety.
That's not what I'm talking
Okay, then I don't know.
about. No, you don't.
No, that's what he mentioned, Paul, is the stock that they have the money to buy the trees. You can speak for yourself.
I got an updated quote because prices change and products come in and out of stock. And the quote that I received had us updated pricing and it has updated what they have in stock.
What is the updated price?
To do everything to plant all the remaining trees per the approved plan is about $5,300. We have donations of about 4,200. So we'll need to pay for the trees that everybody has pledged. The city will have to kick in about $500 to cover the difference. So prices have gone up.
So what's the issue?
What's the issue is that the trees that we circled on our tree plan, they don't have in stock at the size that they want. They're smaller than what we want. And we're going to have to either go up to the nursery or get some pictures or something to see if we want to get trees that are that small.
So we can just wait till they get in stock.
Well, if you remember the tree plan, there was the red, yellow, purple, and I forget the other color. And those three options for each color. So they have different options for each color, but it's not the ones that we circled. So, and the ones that they have are alternates, the ones that are on the plan, they're not the ones that we circled, but they are the right size. So we can either go with the alternate that's the right size, or go with what we circled that's going to be smaller than what we want.
More likely to be vandalized.
Correct. I don't want to get a skinny tree that the kid's just going to come over and snap.
So does that mean the price cost of now $700, which I very much disagree with, is gonna go up?
No, I think it's still the same price, it's just we can't get the tree, because we talked about the $500 difference way back, so. I think it's the question of the size of the tree, that's the issue, I think.
That is one of the issues, yes.
Yeah,
The trees that we want are smaller than what we would like,
right.
or what they have in stock.
Would there be an issue in waiting? I mean, to get the right tree?
Well, I'm gonna have to tell everybody who made donations that they're going to have to wait for however long it's gonna take.
For the growth. So most of the donations.
And we're gonna miss we're gonna miss a whole year's cycle
Yeah,
too.
you'd like to get in it.
Well, they were saying they can plant anytime.
Yeah,
Your
but,
chances of survival are a lot better if you did.
most of these donations came in 4 or 5 months ago.
Oh, yeah, I realize that.
Yeah.
I realize that. You worked very hard on this.
Yeah, so they're going by the mark to see if there are trees in yet.
Okay, I just wanted to know. Thank you.
I would say, the trees proceeded in. Anything else? Then we're adjourned at 8:37.